So microbiome or the normal flora of intestinal tract, we have intestinal tract, we know that we have mouth, we have gut, stomach, small and large intestine. So in stomach, because of the pH, acidic pH, there are very less bacteria are present in our stomach, because at low pH the bacteria cannot survive. So only the H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, is present in stomach, and this H. pylori is a opportunistic bacteria, because this H. pylori infection can lead to a this can lead to a duodenal ulcer. 99% pathogenesis of duodenal ulcer is H. pylori infection. So this H. pylori can survive in this extreme pH, very low pH of the stomach, and that is lead to this duodenal ulcer. Very much common. 99% etiology of duodenal ulcer is H. pylori infection. So that is why if your patient have duodenal ulcer symptom, check for H. pylori. So we have different tests to confirm the H. pylori, and then we start the antibiotics. And this bacteria is also very resistant, so we need to start two antibiotics, 2 or 3 antibiotics to kill this bacteria. Okay, the small intestine, the environment of small intestine is basic. So because of the basic environment, that is why the small intestine also have a very few number of bacteria, and that includes streptococci, lactobacillus, and candida albicans. That is the most common bacteria microbes in our small intestine. The large intestine, because the large intestine, the pH is normal. Okay, normal mean it is around 7. So that is why the large intestine, the colon, it is actually the site at which about 20%, or sorry, the largest or complex microbial population is present there. And most of them they are anaerobes. I think you all have know about the difference between anaerobic and aerobic bacteria. You know about the difference, aerobic and anaerobic.
Yeah.
So aerobic bacteria which survive, which require oxygen. I think we have discussed this. Anaerobic bacteria which utilize some other chemical for their respiration instead of oxygen. So they don't require oxygen. So as a general rule, it's a simple or a common sense. The body areas where the body areas which are open to air, the body area where the air is present, the normal flora of that area will be aerobic bacteria. It's a simple rule of thumb, simple common sense. We know that in our mouth is open, air is there, we inhale through mouth, we inhale through nose, skin is there, so skin is also exposed to air. Our lungs, they are exposed to air. Trachea, it is exposed to air. Throat, it is exposed to air. So it means these areas, they are exposed to air. So majority of the microbiome or the normal flora of these regions, they are aerobic bacteria, because oxygen is there, air is there. Okay, so air is there, so it means oxygen is there, and those bacteria will be of aerobic bacteria. And those bacteria which are present in our cavities, body cavities where there is no air, in our intestine there is no air, in our intestine there is no air, there is no oxygen, or the oxygen concentration is very less in our intestine. So that is why the large intestine, the colon environment is anaerobic. So only anaerobic bacteria can survive there. So that is why we have like the highest microbial population of anaerobe bacteria, they are present in our colon. And 20% of the feces that consist of anaerobic bacteria. So just imagine 20% of the feces, it contained the anaerobic bacteria. And here is actually the range 1011 organism per gram of feces. 1 gram of feces contain 1011 organisms. That is actually the anaerobic bacteria. So within the intestine, there are two major bacteria or phylum of bacteria. They are present. One is Firmicutes and bacteroides. Firmicutes, that is a 64%. It reside about, its population is about 64%, and bacteroides, they are 23%. So this Firmicutes, these are actually the gram-positive rods. These are the bacilli rods, and they belongs to the genera Clostridium. So Clostridium tetani. Okay, so this is also belong to the same. So Clostridium and Faecalibacterium. These are the two most common organisms which are present in the colon. In our colon, there are two major phyla of bacteria, Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes. Bacteroidetes. Firmicutes, it is gram positive. Bacteroidetes, it is gram negative. Okay, these are the gram negative rods. And the example of this Firmicutes, we have Clostridium and Faecalibacterium. These are the prominent bacteria which present in our large intestine. While for the example of this Bacteroidetes, these are gram negative. So we have bacteroides, Prevotella. These are the common genera. These are which are present in our colon. Along with that, the proteobacteria, for example, E. coli and Salmonella, Actinobacteria, that is Actinobacteria, this is a gram positive, while E. coli and Salmonella, these are gram negative. So proteobacteria and Actinobacteria, they are also present in our intestine. Intestine means colon, in large intestine. So in the large intestine, these bacteria, they play an important role. They play an important role for immunity, as well as they also responsible for, they also prevent certain disorders. This is a very important point. There is a, nowadays the scientist has confirmed, they have confirmed that alteration of these bacteria, which bacteria? These gut bacteria, proteobacteria, Firmicutes or Bacteroidetes, the change in this flora can lead to a certain disorders. Can lead to a certain disorders. What disorders? It has all this thing already been established that the obesity, inflammatory diseases like inflammatory bowel diseases, Crohn disease and ulcerative colitis, these diseases are, maybe one of the reason of these diseases is if there is a change in this colonal flora. The scientists have confirmed this. What they performed one experiment. What they did, they tried to find out the link between obesity and the gut bacteria. Okay, they tried to link between the gut bacteria and obesity. They tried to check whether these bacteria have any effect on obesity of a person. Okay, so what happened, what they did, they transfer the fecal bacteria from a obese mice into a germ free strain of non obese mice. They transfer, what they did a transfer, like they tried to find out the relationship between the obesity and these microbes. So what they did, they were having two mice. One was obese and one was non-obese. So they isolate the bacteria from the feces of a obese mice, and then they transplanted these bacteria into a non-obese mice. So the result was the non-obese mice become obese. The non-obese mice become obese. It means that there is a correlation. It means that there is a correlation between obesity and the fecal bacteria. It means that the fecal bacteria has this the fecal bacteria have an important role for causing obesity. So this that was an experiment just to confirm this relationship. Okay, so another disease that is like we have inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel diseases. Inflammatory bowel diseases. There are two inflammatory bowel diseases, and these diseases are autoimmune diseases. Remember, these are autoimmune diseases. One is Crohn disease, and second is ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis. So these diseases collectively call a inflammatory bowel disease. So inflammatory bowel diseases, they also have a link between the normal flora and the incidence of these inflammatory bowel diseases. Those patients, it has been established, the scientists have established that those patients who have altered gut microbial flora, they will have more chances of inflammatory bowel diseases. They will have more chances of inflammatory bowel diseases. That is why you are just in third year. So in internal medicine, when you study these diseases, Crohn disease, ulcerative colitis, one of the management, one of the treatment for this inflammatory bowel disease is we give normal flora. How we give normal flora? So nowadays, this normal flora is known as probiotic. Have you heard probiotics? This name, probiotics.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so probiotics are actually, these are the normal flora bacteria. So especially the patient develop diarrhea, we give these probiotics. So what they do, these probiotics, they regenerate the normal flora. So one of the management for inflammatory bowel disease, we give this probiotics. We provide the gut bacteria, because the patients who have because the scientists have found that the patient with inflammatory bowel diseases, they have altered normal flora. Either their normal flora is altered, like change, or either there is a less bacteria in their normal flora of a gut. So that is one of the pathogenesis that will lead to inflammatory bowel diseases. Understood? Understood? So
Yes, sir.
it means that these diseases, they have relationship with our normal flora. Okay, next we have the skin, the microbes which are present on the skin. So most common we have Staphylococcus epidermidis, uh, diphtheroid, and Streptococci peptococcus. But among them, Staphylococcus epidermidis, that is the most common one that is present in our skin. So in our skin, remember, we have a skin surface, and we also have the hair follicles, because hair follicles are also present on skin. So some bacteria, they also present in the hair follicles. You know, most of, I think all of you or all of us, we take shower every day. And when we take shower, we use soap, or maybe we use some detergent to clean our skin, to wash our skin. So don't you think when we use soap or any kind of detergent, so because of detergent effect, all the bacteria which are present on the skin, it become washed out after washing your hand, after washing your body with the soap. So from where there is a regeneration of the normal flora. These bacteria, Staphylococcus epidermidis or the normal flora, they also present in the hair follicle, because hair follicle is deep. It is deep hair follicle. So soap or any other detergent cannot penetrate into the hair follicle. So when you wash out your body with a soap, so the staphylococcus or the superficial bacteria which are present on the skin, they become washed out. But the bacteria which are present in the hair follicle, they remain there, and these bacteria will regenerate the normal flora of our skin. Okay. Okay, so the skin, the normal flora of the skin, it is less complex as compared to the gut, because gut we have a very so many bacteria. So in colon we have discussed, we have like different kind of species. We discuss about it. For the skin, the most predominant organism is Staphylococcus epidermidis. So this bacteria is normally does not cause any disease. So it's a non-pathogenic bacteria. But I told you most of the bacteria of normal flora, they are opportunistic bacteria. They have opportunistic relationship as well. So this Staphylococcus epidermidis, it is non-pathogenic, but this the same bacteria can cause a very complex diseases as well. For example, this pathogen, this bacteria, when enter into the body, for example, if you have some skin infection, or let's suppose if you have some cut on a skin, some injury on a skin, so through the skin injury, this bacteria can enter into the blood, and from this blood, from the blood circulation, this bacteria can reach to the heart. It reaches to the heart. When it reaches to the heart, this Staphylococcus epidermidis will lead to a cause the either the rheumatic fever, or either it cause the this inflammation in prosthetic joints. It affects the heart walls, that will lead to a valvular heart disease, and patient suffer uh, from these valvular diseases, or you can say the patient will suffer with heart failure, because valvular disease will lead to a heart failure. So this bacteria, it is non-pathogenic, but when it enter into the skin because of the cut or any inflammation through the blood, it can reach to different part of the body, especially if a patient have a artificial heart walls. So this bacteria will lead to a valvular heart disease, so the wall becomes stenosed. Okay, so there will be a calcification occur on the heart wall. I'm just explaining you a simple terminology about this. Okay, then complex terminology, we call this disease as a valvular heart disease. And this bacteria also cause inflammation, the same stenosis, sorry, not stenosis, calcification against these prosthetic joints. So that is why this bacteria is also pathogenic in nature. The other species of bacteria which also present on our blood, on our skin, that is Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus, it is also a opportunistic bacteria, and this Staphylococcus aureus may lead to a skin disease that is known as cellulitis, inflammation of cellulitis. It is a very complex disease, very complex disease. And as I told you that Staphylococcus aureus is a flesh eating bacteria. So if a patient develops cellulitis, you will see there is a development of pus, and that area it become necrosed, and it will be removed out. You will see there will be a grooves will be formed. So cellulitis, I have seen one patient, like it's very difficult to treat. And if it involve the this one bones, then it is become more difficult to treat. Okay, and sometime we need to amputate the limb. Okay, and remember, don't confuse the cellulitis with female cellulitis. In female cellulitis, we have another term cellulitis in which there is a accumulation of fat and water under the skin. So that will make the skin more fluffy and obesity, like obese. So that is also known as cellulitis. I'm not talking about that cellulitis. I'm talking about the inflammation that is caused by the Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, so about there are on the skin about we have 10 power 3 to 10 power 4 organisms per centimeter square of the skin. So we also have a high quantity of bacteria on our skin, and most of the bacteria, they are located superficially, as I told you, superficially. So when we wash our hand, wash our skin, they become wash out. Okay, and but they are also present in the hair follicles from where they can regenerate. So we also have a anaerobic organisms which are present on the skin, that is Propionibacterium and Peptococcus. They are present in deep follicle. They are anaerobe. So in deep follicle, they are not superficial, they are deep follicle. So in deep follicles, the oxygen level is low. That is why they can survive there. In deep follicle, there is no oxygen. So that is why these bacteria can survive at that atmosphere. So we have these bacteria, Propionibacterium, because they are present deep under the skin. So these bacteria can also cause the acne vulgaris. One of the etiology, one of the cause of acne vulgaris, it is also this Propionibacterium. So because it is anaerobe bacteria, so that is why we need to give the medicine which also cover this anaerobic bacteria. Okay. So Candida albicans, or a yeast, it also a normal flora of a skin. But remember, I told you this is also a opportunistic yeast fungus. So normally it is a normal flora, but in immunocompromised, this yeast or Candida will lead to a ringworm infection. And if this yeast or fungi, if it enter into the skin, how it enter into the skin? Because of any injury, because of any cut or any infection on the skin, this yeast can enter into the blood, and when it enter into the blood, it may lead to a systemic infection. So especially in those patients, who are immunocompromised. So in those patients, there is a high risk of this yeast or fungal infection. So that is about all about the microbiomes of the skin. So this is skin. Class understood? Any question? Okay, so next we have the bacteria which are present in our respiratory tract. So in respiratory tract, we also have a respiratory tract, upper respiratory tract. It is composed of nose, throat, and mouth. This is our upper respiratory tract. So in upper respiratory tract, we have a wide spectrum of bacteria. Okay, we have too much bacteria in mouth, nose, and throat. But when we go down like in trachea, bronchi, alveoli. In these areas, the number of bacteria are very less as compared to the mouth. Okay, so in mouth, throat, or upper respiratory tract, we have a high quantity of bacteria, but when we enter into the bronchi or the alveoli, the number of bacteria become very few. The nose, it is continuously exposed to the air through inhalation. So it contains variety of bacteria like Staphylococcus species. And most common one is a Staphylococcus aureus. That is why the nasal infections, nasopharyngitis, okay, uh, this Staphylococcus aureus infection is very common. Okay, so Staphylococcus aureus, it is present in our nasal cavity. So if somebody have this infection, sinusitis, or this nasal infection, so when the patient cough or when the patient sneeze, so during sneezing or coughing, this bacteria will spread nearby. It spread through the droplet. So that is why in newborn nurseries or the areas which are very confined, like very, for example, if you in the within the hospital, within a if one room of the hospital we have multiple patients, if a patient is living in healthcare facilities like old age homes, so because those areas are not too much open, they are closed area. So if so those areas, if one patient have this infection, Staphylococcus aureus infection, so with the sneezing, coughing, this bacteria will be transferred to the air, and anybody who is inhaling the air, this bacteria can also cause a infection in other patients, in other like person. So next we have the throats. So the throat, it contains a Streptococci viridian, Neisseria species, and Streptococcus epidermidis. Neisseria and Staphylococcus epidermidis. And in our throat, most common Neisseria is Neisseria meningitis. Neisseria meningitis, it is the normal flora that is present in our nose. There is another species of Neisseria, that is Neisseria gonorrhea. That is we call gonococcal infection that cause gonorrhea in gonorrhea. Neisseria gonorrhea. So Neisseria gonorrhea, it causes gonorrhea, that is a STD, sexually transmitted disease. Okay, so this bacteria Neisseria gonorrhea is present in our urinary tract, and it also causes this gonorrhea. Okay, so this bacteria in our nose, we have Neisseria meningitis. Neisseria meningitis. So as the name suggests, meningitis, it means this bacteria can cause meningitis. So it is also a normal flora of our throat. So this Neisseria meningitis can enter into the blood, and then it can enter into the brain and cause meningitis. So this is also a opportunistic bacteria. Okay. In the mouth, we have Streptococcus viridian, and this Streptococcus viridian, it also help in plaque formation, but we also have another species, that is Streptococcus mutagens. Streptococcus mutagens, that is also responsible for plaque formation, dental plaque. Streptococcus, sorry, not mutagen, that is mutants. Streptococcus mutant, M-U-T-E-N, sorry, mutant. So this Streptococcus mutant and Streptococcus viridian, these are present in our mouth, and Streptococcus mutant and both viridian species then cause the plaque formation. But remember, for plaque, mutant is more responsible than viridian species. Okay, so Streptococcus actually actually it belongs to the same viridian group, but the among the viridian group, this Streptococcus mutans, it actually cause dental plaque formation, MUTAN. Sorry. So how the plaque is formed? How the plaque is formed, and what is the plaque? We know that our teeth, it is the surface of teeth is a enamel. It is an enamel surface, and the plaque is composed of a salivary proteins. These are the proteins that deposit on the enamel of a teeth. And these proteins or these plaque, it is a high molecular weight glucans that are secreted by this Streptococcus mutans. So these high molecular weight glucans, that is a salivary protein, it deposit on the enamel of a teeth. It is produced because of the food. Which food? Like when we eat food, this bacteria convert the food proteins or the fruit compounds into this gelatinous compound, that is we call glucans. And this glucan, it actually adhere, or it actually deposit on the enamel of a teeth, and that will cause a plaque, dental plaque. Okay, another pathogenesis of this is these bacteria, these Streptococcus mutans, they also produce a large amount of acid, and because of large amount of acid, they demineralize the enamel, and ultimately it will, because you know our teeth, they are made up of calcium. So when calcium is when we like put the calcium salt in a acid solution, the calcium will be dissolved in acid. So the same, when, because these bacteria, it secrete the acid demineralize the enamel, and ultimately there will be a dissolution of the teeth. So you will see, if you don't clean your teeth, for example, this is a teeth. If you don't clean your teeth, if plaque is there, so what will happen? This plaque will destroy, first it destroy the enamel, and then your teeth will be smaller and smaller. Why it becomes smaller and smaller? Because of the acid that is produced by this Staphylococcus mutant, it dissolves the calcium compounds which are present in your teeth, and ultimately it produces a dental caries. This is known as dental caries. So this is another important pathogenesis of this bacteria, Staphylococcus mutans. And this Staphylococcus mutant, it belongs to the Viridian family. Class understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so another, within our bacteria, we also have another bacteria, that is Staphylococcus sanguinus. Staphylococcus sanguinus. This Streptococcus sanguinus, it is involved in the endocarditis. This bacteria, Streptococcus sanguinus, this bacteria, when it enter into the blood, from the blood it enters into the heart, and in the heart it causes inflammation, infection, that is we call endocarditis. So one of the pathogenesis of endocarditis is this bacteria. So just look in our oral cavity, how many bacteria are present and how they can cause disease, systemic disease as well as local diseases. So that is why wash your teeth twice a day. Okay, and it's better if you wash your teeth after every meal. So we can prevent, first of all, we can prevent the deposition of these bacteria, and we can control the bacterial colonies or bacterial population in our mouth. Okay, along with that, we also have in our like Okay. Along with that, this we also have some anaerobic bacterial species like bacteroids, Prevotella, Fusobacterium, and Clostridium. They are also present in gingival cerevisiae. Okay, so because these are the anaerobic bacteria, so that's why they are present in our gingival cerevisiae. So these bacteria, they are anaerobe and they may cause a infection or gum infections. So that's why I told you that the patient who are having a infection, gum infection, those patients should receive anaerobic treatment as well. Okay, class, that was about your staph respiratory tract. We have about 1 minute. Okay, so your attendance I will take after the next class, during the next class. Okay, if you have any question, please you can ask. And after the break, we will start our pharmacology lecture.